They say power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. But what happens when a man doesn't just embrace that corruption? He becomes the embodiment of it. This is the story of General Sani Abacha, a dictator who ruled Nigeria with fear, silence, and blood. A man who looted billions while burying dissent, leaving a trail of death and secrets. Decades after his death, the world is still uncovering the extent of his theft and the pain he left behind. From executions behind closed doors to stolen fortunes hidden across continents, this is more than a history. It's a warning carved in greed and cruelty. Let's begin. Sani Abacha was born in 1943 in Kano, Nigeria, into a conservative Kanuri Muslim family. From a young age, he pursued a military career, joining the Nigerian army and rising steadily through its ranks. His early years were marked by discipline, ambition, and a sharp understanding of power. By the time the Nigerian Civil War broke out in 1967, Abacha was ready. He fought in the war and earned recognition for his strategic competence, gaining the attention of military elites. His reputation as a loyal, calculated officer led to more influence. Abacha played critical roles in two major coups, first in 1983, when the civilian government of Shehu Shagari was overthrown, and again in 1985, helping Ibrahim Babangida seize power. He operated mostly from behind the scenes but remained a key architect in Nigeria's military reshuffling. By 1993, Abacha had become Minister of Defense, positioning himself at the heart of the nation's power structure. When the country descended into political unrest following the annulment of a democratic election, Abacha saw his moment. In November 1993, he led another coup, this time claiming the top spot for himself. Within days, he declared himself head of state, dissolved democratic institutions, and suspended the constitution. The era of military dictatorship was now firmly in his grip, and he would rule Nigeria with fear and force until his sudden death in 1998. But how did the perfect storm of chaos and confusion pave the way for his rise? Let's find out. The early 1990s were a time of deep political uncertainty in Nigeria. In June 1993, the country held what was widely considered its freest and fairest presidential election. Businessman Moshood Kashimawo Olawale, MKO, Abiola, Africa's wealthiest man at the time, appeared poised to win, but the military regime under General Ibrahim Babangida shockingly annulled the results. The move sparked national outrage and created a power vacuum that threatened to spiral into chaos. In a desperate bid to calm the storm, an interim national government was formed under Ernest Shonekan, a civilian with little real power, but the foundation was already crumbling. And on November 17, 1993, Abacha struck. Using the unrest as justification, he removed Shonekan and seized control.
The interim national government is hereby dissolved. The national and state assemblies are also dissolved.
Many Nigerians, weary of instability, initially welcomed him as a stabilizing figure. But stability came at a devastating cost. Almost immediately, Abacha set aside all pretense of democracy. He suspended the constitution, banned political parties, suppressed the media, and unleashed the full force of military rule. What began as a promise of order quickly turned into a reign of fear. And this reign was just getting started. From the moment General Sani Abacha seized power, fear became a tool of governance. The most striking symbol of that fear was the arrest of MKO. In 1994, a year after the military annulled the election,
they are arresting me on an allegation of felony, nameless treason or something like that.
Abiola was presumed to have won, and thus declared himself the rightful president. Within days, he was arrested. No trial, no appeal. He remained imprisoned in harsh conditions for 4 years, until his mysterious death in custody in 1998. To justify such brutal acts, Abacha shredded Nigeria's 1989 constitution and ruled entirely by military decree. Any trace of democratic process was dismantled. The National Assembly was gone. The courts were silenced. There was no rule of law, only the rule of Abacha. The press became another battleground. Under Decree 43, journalists could be arrested for publishing material deemed embarrassing to the regime. That could mean anything. Publications like The News, Tempo, and Tell were raided and shut down. Editors went into exile. Others vanished. Then came the execution that shocked the world. Ken Saro-Wiwa, a Nobel Peace Prize nominee and leader of the movement for the survival of the Ogoni people, MOSOP. His campaign against oil pollution by Shell in the Niger Delta made him a target. In a military tribunal widely condemned as a sham, Saro-Wiwa and 8 others were sentenced to death. On November 10, 1995, despite appeals from global leaders, including Nelson Mandela and Pope John Paul II, they were hanged. Reports claim their corpses were soaked in acid and buried in unmarked graves. Nigeria was promptly suspended from the Commonwealth. But the killings didn't stop there. Alhaja Kudirat Abiola, wife of MKO Abiola, was shot in her car on June 4, 1996, while organizing pro-democracy protests, reportedly by Abacha's strike force. Chief Alfred Rewane, wealthy businessman and outspoken Democrat, was murdered in his home in October 1995. Rear Admiral Babatunde Elegbede, former governor and intelligence chief, was shot dead in his car in June 1994. Admiral Emmanuel Omotehinwa, another former military governor, was gunned down on May 22, 1996. Toyin Onagorua, son of the justice minister, was killed in a targeted hit, seen as a warning to the judiciary. Chief Mrs. Bisoye Tejuoso, respected industrialist, was ambushed and shot in September 1996. Alhaja Suliat Adedeji, prominent political figure, was murdered in November 1996. General Shehu Musa Yaradua, former deputy to Obasanjo, died mysteriously in prison in December 1997, widely believed to have been poisoned. Dr. Sola Omatsala, fierce critic of the regime, died in a bomb explosion in December 1997 that was never properly investigated. Tunde Oladepo, journalist for The Guardian, was shot dead in front of his wife and children in February 1998, a brutal message to the press. Each death was part of a chilling pattern, silencing voices, crippling movements, instilling fear. But while blood flowed in the streets and families mourned, billions of dollars were quietly disappearing, setting the stage for the next betrayal. While prisons overflowed and voices vanished, Abacha and his circle emptied Nigeria's vaults. Over $5 billion was looted. Some believe much more. The central bank became a personal ATM. Fake memos citing security needs triggered massive cash withdrawals, no questions asked. Truckloads of money vanished into private homes, bunkers, and even septic tanks. Oil deals were hijacked. International oil companies paid hefty kickbacks for contracts. Friends got inflated deals while national wealth evaporated. Much of the loot ended up in Swiss banks and offshore havens. Institutions that should have sounded alarms quietly complied. Then in 1998, Abacha died suddenly and somewhat mysteriously. Some said he was taken out by Western powers. Others said he was given a poisoned apple by exotic escorts from abroad who had visited the night before. While the general was gone, the money trail wasn't. What came next was a global pursuit through courtrooms and bank records. In 1999, a year after Abacha's death, Nigeria hired Swiss lawyer Enrico Monfrini to recover billions in stolen funds. Armed with just a few closed account numbers, Monfrini began a chase that quickly unraveled a vast international web. He uncovered hidden assets across Switzerland, the Bahamas, Luxembourg, Liechtenstein, and the Cayman Islands. Abacha's network used fake names, shell companies, and front foundations to move hundreds of millions without detection. Swiss courts, under pressure, began freezing accounts, $700 million by 2000. Monfrini's key breakthrough came when he proved Abacha's circle functioned like a criminal gang. This allowed prosecutors to seize assets under organized crime laws, turning a local effort into a global mission. Countries like the US, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, and the UK joined in, exposing just how far Abacha's reach and the world's silence had gone. Over $5 billion has been recovered. Switzerland returned $500 million in 2005, $322 million followed in 2017, and another $311 million came back from 2017 to 2020, the US and Jersey in 2020. Still, investigators believe billions remain hidden across the globe. How much has been recovered so far as of April 2025? The reported $5 billion, or $50 billion. Who can say just how much exactly he stole and how much is yet to be recovered? Who can say which of his cronies and children harbored and indeed spent looted funds? It's been 27 years since his passing, and as funds are still being discovered to the day, we may never truly know the answer to these questions. Nigeria has no reason to be poor because it truly isn't. Blessed with natural resources like oil, stones and minerals, beautiful climate and arable land, the country was once a haven for expatriates, tourists, and a beacon of African development. Today, it has become a quasi-failed state with dilapidated infrastructure, perennial insurgency, endemic corruption, and crippling poverty. When one revisits the thievery of Abacha and many more public office holders like him, it's easy to see where Nigeria's commonwealth has gone and why things are the way they are. Rather than build hospitals in the country, the leaders fly out to use European doctors. Rather than build schools locally, they send their own kids to prestigious colleges, from Europe to the USA. And instead of addressing the root cause of violence and insecurity, they simply privatize the police and armed forces to protect themselves and their families. David Cameron, the UK's former Prime Minister, once told Queen Elizabeth when he was introducing Nigeria's then President, Muhammadu Buhari, that the country was fantastically corrupt, and that if the UK were looted the way Nigeria has been, it would cease to exist. Nigeria's story is one of tragic dichotomy, rich but impoverished, great yet mediocre, teeming with talent but with many potentials unfulfilled. There have been many Abachas since the general's demise in 1998, and there is perhaps no calculator capable enough to compute just how much of Nigeria's wealth has been diverted since then, into personal pockets instead of using it for nation building. As Africa's largest economy and the world's most populous black nation, one thing is for sure: Africa will not rise until Nigeria repents from its self-destructive culture of public sector looting. What's your take on the ongoing search for the billions Abacha left behind? Share your thoughts below and be sure to subscribe for more eye-opening stories like this.